The wind howls across the frozen steppe, carrying with it the bitter sting of defeat and the silence of a land untouched by mercy. German soldiers, once confident and full of bravado, now shiver in the relentless Russian winter, their faces etched with exhaustion and disbelief. Their tanks are frozen, engines dead and silent, turned into monuments of ambition halted by nature's icy grip. Supplies vanish beneath the snow, lost to blizzards and chaos, leaving men hungry and desperate. This is more than a setback. It's a lesson in hubris, a warning written in frostbite and failure. The plan was bold, meticulously drawn on maps, but the land and climate were underestimated, their power overlooked in the rush for glory. Blitzkrieg, designed for quick victories and rapid advances, falters in this vast hostile expanse where speed becomes a liability. The war shifts from lightning strikes to a brutal test of endurance and resources. The wilderness punishes overconfidence, grinding down even the strongest wills. Here, on the outskirts of Moscow, the myth of the invincible German war machine shatters, replaced by the harsh reality of attrition and retreat. To understand this collapse, we must look back at the origins of Blitzkrieg, to the days when its promise seemed unstoppable. Its early triumphs planted the seeds of disaster as victory bred overconfidence and blinded leaders to looming dangers. Even the most brilliant tactics cannot defy the harsh realities of modern war, where nature and attrition are as deadly as any enemy. The frozen front is a warning. Nature and logistics are enemies no strategy can ignore, no matter how advanced or daring. The story of Blitzkrieg is a story of fatal overreach, where ambition outpaced reality and the cost was paid in blood and ice. Blitzkrieg was not just a tactic. It was a revolution in warfare, a bold new approach that stunned the world with its speed and coordination. Tanks and dive bombers struck with speed and terror, aiming to break through a single weak point in enemy lines, then pour through the gap before defenders could react. Stuka sirens screamed overhead, sowing panic and confusion as armored columns surged deep into enemy territory, leaving chaos in their wake. Motorized infantry followed close behind, swiftly encircling and overwhelming defenders who barely had time to organize a response. The enemy, cut off and confused, often surrendered en masse, unable to comprehend the relentless pace of the German assault. In Poland and France, this method seemed unstoppable, as cities fell in days and entire armies collapsed in weeks. Victories came so swiftly that the world believed Germany had discovered a new, unbeatable formula for modern war. The myth of invincibility took hold, fueled by propaganda and the awe of both allies and enemies. But these early successes were deceptive, hiding the risks beneath the surface of triumph. They taught German leaders the wrong lessons. Overconfidence replaced caution, and hubris began to cloud judgment. Blitzkrieg was seen as a universal solution, not just a tool for specific situations, blinding commanders to its limitations. The seeds of overreach were sown in these dazzling triumphs, as victory bred dangerous illusions of invulnerability. The real test was yet to come, and the dawn of Blitzkrieg would soon give way to far greater challenges. The fall of France convinced Hitler and his generals they had mastered modern war. They ignored logistics and long-term planning, believing every enemy would collapse quickly. Warnings from cautious generals were dismissed. The German economy was never fully prepared for a long conflict. Production focused on quality, not quantity, and stockpiles were neglected. The entire strategy became a high-stakes gamble, built on the illusion of endless success. Modern war is fought in factories as much as on battlefields. Germany lacked vital resources, oil, rubber, even iron ore. Blitzkrieg aimed to conquer what Germany needed, but this created a dangerous cycle. The war machine had to keep advancing just to survive. The strategy assumed quick victories and immediate access to resources, but when enemies refused to collapse, supply lines stretched thin and the system faltered. The Allies, by contrast, had vast resources and global supply lines. The longer the war dragged on, the more Germany's position weakened. It was a race against time Germany could not win. In June 1941, Germany launched its largest military operation ever, Operation Barbarossa, invading the vast expanse of the Soviet Union with over 3 million troops. The world watched as Hitler gambled everything on a swift victory in the east. Early victories echoed the triumphs in France as German forces swept through Soviet territory. But the Soviet Union was not only immense in size, it was also fiercely resilient, with resources and manpower on a scale Germany had never faced before. As the Germans pressed deeper, their supply lines stretched thin and began to break down. Roads turned to endless mud, fuel and food ran short, and the rapid advance slowed to a crawl. The Soviets retreated strategically, burning crops, destroying infrastructure, and relocating entire factories far beyond German reach, denying the invaders vital resources at every turn. Soviet war production rebounded with astonishing speed. New armies were raised, fresh recruits poured in, and tanks and artillery rolled off assembly lines, replacing losses and strengthening defenses. Then the brutal Russian winter struck with full force. German troops, unprepared for the freezing cold, suffered terribly. Vehicles froze, weapons jammed, and the offensive ground to a halt outside Moscow. The era of blitzkrieg was over. The war in the east became a grinding, relentless battle of attrition, with both sides enduring unimaginable hardship and loss. Germany now found itself trapped in the very kind of drawn-out conflict its strategy was meant to avoid. The gamble for a quick victory had failed, and disaster loomed on the horizon. The Eastern Front transformed into a brutal war of endurance, not speed, testing the limits of every soldier and every nation involved. Soviet resilience, combined with the unforgiving Russian winter, ultimately proved decisive, turning the tide against the invaders. The myth of German invincibility was shattered in the snow. Operation Barbarossa's fatal gamble had led to catastrophe, changing the course of the war forever. The failure of blitzkrieg was a failure of numbers. German industry could not match Allied production. The US became the arsenal of democracy, outproducing Germany in tanks, planes and ships. Allied losses could be replaced. German losses could not. Strategic bombing crippled German factories and forced resources away from the front. Allied navies cut off Germany's access to global resources. The war was now fought in the skies and seas as much as on land. Germany was besieged, starved, and outmatched. Winning battles was not enough. Sustaining the war was impossible. Blitzkrieg's promise ended in defeat, overwhelmed by industrial might and strategic reality.